Hello YouTube and welcome to Just My Opinion UK. Today I am bringing you up a follow-up video from my review of the Rolex versus the Omega. Now I've had a bit of feedback from that video and people have been asking me, is the Rolex worth the extra money to the Omega? Which is an incredibly good question, very, very good question. Now I'm just going to go into a bit of detail on why the Rolex is more money, and I'm hoping that this might make it a little bit clearer for people. So I'm just going to push that out of the way, and we'll start with the watch that we did in the comparison, which of course is the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean with the caliber 8500 movement on a 42mm case. So this is the smaller version, it's not the big 45mm version. Now this watch, very, very good watch, 8500 movement, fantastic 600 metre diving ability with a 60-hour power reserve, so it's a very, very cool diver's watch. Now this watch retails at £4,100, whereas the the Rolex Submariner retails and starts from £5,450 for the no-date Submariner in black. The version I have is the green Hulk version, the LV version, with the date, which retails at £6,600. So for this comparison, this watch, the Planet Ocean, is going to represent Omega as a whole, and the Rolex Submariner is going to be representing Rolex as a whole. So to get into it, one detail that you will see is Omega's bracelet. Now Omega do a perfectly adequate bracelet, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. You can see there it's a brushed aluminium with polished end links, so it is a nice standard sort of bracelet. Now when you look, you can see through the end links, through the links. If you look there on the end link, just keep your eye on this bit here, the gap, and you can see it's closed, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed, and so on. So you can see on the whole there's movement in this bracelet. You can see, and if you listen, you can hear it as well. So now that isn't because this is a particularly old watch, it isn't, it's a 2016 model. It is just that is how the bracelet is designed, and you know, this is how Omega have obviously intended the watch to be. Now it's by no accident, because when you get the Omega Speedmaster Professional and you look at the bracelet on this watch, again look at the gap, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed, and if you can hear it have a bit of a chatter. Now let's bring in the Rolex at this point, and we look at the, again we've got the, you can see through it just like you can with the Omega. And if you take a look at the end link, it's open, and it's still open. It's open, it's still open. So you can see there's hardly any movement whatsoever. And if you listen, nothing. That is just one example of the quality difference between an Omega and a Rolex. So anybody who asks me, is the Rolex worth the extra £1,400? That is just one small example of why the quality on a Rolex is so much higher than an Omega. Now, that, like I said, that is just one example. Another example I would point out is, going back to the Planet Ocean, just listen very, very carefully to the bezel as I rotate it. Right, that was very, what I would call raw. It's a very, not, I'm trying not to say cheap, but it's verging on a cheap bezel. It's verging on, it doesn't feel quality. The other day I was having a look at a Seiko, and I've got to say the Seiko bezel moved better than the Omega. So I think Omega have got a bit of ground to make up on the bezels. They're not, they aren't the best, and they're not known for being the best bezels, to be honest. So that was just an example on the Planet Ocean. So once again, Right, so there we have the Planet Ocean. The Rolex, listen carefully. So precise and quality. It feels tighter, it feels more precise, it's just a better, far superior bezel, far superior. And if there was one thing I was going to pick as a fault between on the Omega compared to the Rolex, it is the bezel movement. The bezel movement on the Omega, in comparison to the Rolex, is left wanting. The Submariner is just absolutely superb. The Omega is without doubt left wanting. Now, one other detail which is worth looking at in comparison is when it comes to the clasp. Now the clasp on the Omega is the 2 pins, so we've got 1 pin here, 1 pin here. If you press the 1 pin, the clasp will not open. You have to press them both to release it. Very, very good mechanism, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with this clasp whatsoever. We've got obviously got the diver's extension in there, so you just pop it and it goes over the wetsuit. Let's put it back in, just fill there, that's it. So then it's just enclosed. So it's a perfectly adequate clasp, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But you can't micro adjust. So you have to have this watch perfectly sized to your wrist. There is no micro adjustments in this clasp. Whereas, again, we come to the Rolex, and we go around to the clasp, and if we pop this open, you can see obviously it's got a security lock here, and then you've got to get your finger under and pop it. So it's a very, very secure clasp. But without doubt, the jewel in the crown of this watch is the glide lock system. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically you can make micro adjustments to the watch strap, to the bracelet, without needing a screwdriver. So all you do is you just pull that, and that releases it, and then you can slide this up and down. So say if it's a really, really warm day and you want it extended, you just do it to the max. Or if it's a really cold day and your wrist is shrunk a little bit, you just do that. So really, really cool. Really, really cool feature of this watch. So again, just do that. I always keep it about midway, as you can see there. So absolutely superb. And there it fastens and then secured. And that is, to me, this is the ultimate clasp. This is the perfect clasp. Tudor actually do a really, really interesting clasp actually, which is, I believe it works on a spring mechanism, which is quite good. So it doesn't allow necessarily micro adjustments, but if your wrist is expanding one day due to the temperatures, it does allow for that, which I think that's quite a cool idea. But no, certainly the Rolex again just wins hands down on the clasp. Not to mention the fact that 904L stainless steel in comparison to just stainless steel. I've had this watch on now near enough every day for over a month, and I do have an active job, so it's not as if I'm just sat in an office all day. You can see there's a little micro hair there, a tiny little hairline. Nothing really to shout about. No. Slight one there maybe. So there's nothing major, nothing major. But the Omega, again, nothing to really shout about. A few slight hairlines maybe, but nothing. But you can just see between the two watches, you can see the difference with the bracelets. You can see the 904L versus the just standard stainless. You can see the quality difference in the two watches. Now, if you were to go solely, when I did my review of these two watches, I did it based on, a very, very simple sort of scoring system. Now, if you take into account, the bits and bats that we've been talking about, the micro detail and the quality levels, This is where I think Rolex really do win over Omega. Omega, I love Omega as a brand, I really, really do. I think Omega have done some superb watches. I mean, you know, the Omega Speedmaster Professional, one of my favourite watches of all time. I adore this watch. I think quality-wise, you know, this watch is, you know, it's really, really cool. I think it's a lovely watch. But the Rolex just, you know, every Rolex watch I've ever picked up and ever touched just reeks of quality. Whereas, you know, some of the Omegas can feel a little bit more on the cheaper side. They're not cheap, you know, they're not cheap by any means. You know, Omega are a very, very good brand and they make quality watches. The watches just don't feel as good a quality as what the Rolex do. So, you know, people's question, this watch is 4,100. This watch, the basic model is 5,450. So we're looking at roughly about £1,400 difference between the Omega to the Rolex. The question has been, is the Rolex worth £1,400 more than the Omega? And in my opinion, yes, all day long, the Rolex is worth £1,400 more than the Omega Speedmaster, the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean. All day long, it is worth more, for the reasons I've mentioned, along with others. On a point system, the Omega only scored 2 points below the Submariner, which, you know, on a point system, a basic point system, you know, like for like, that, you know, that was the scores. When it comes to personal opinion and when it comes to looking into things in a bit more depth, the gap is bigger. So my advice to you would be try both watches on. You know, look at Omega, look at Rolex, and go with which one you like the best. If you're wanting something a bit more on the dressier side, a bit more, something with more finesse, then go for the Rolex. If you're wanting something just as a tool watch that is just to get knocked about, then, you know, by all means, the Omega is the watch to go for. It's a bit more chunkier on the wrist. The way I rotate my watches, I wear the Omega as my daily wearer for work and things. I've got my Speedy for weekends and, you know, dossing around at home, and I've got my Rolex for if I'm going out to the pub or out for a meal somewhere. So that's how I try and rotate these 3 watches. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been some use, and I hope it's answered a few of your questions that people have been sending me. Please ask any questions you like, leave a comment in the section below, check out my other videos and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. This is Just My Opinion UK.